Wednesday, June 27th, 2018, and this is the start of an interview for the Mishicot Historical Museum with Mr. Otto H. Schultz at his apartment in the court complex of Felician Village in Manitowoc. My name is Jack Spevacek, and I will be the interviewer. I will be talking to Mr. Schultz about his memories and experiences regarding the village of Mishicot and the Mishicot School District. Mr. Schultz, what were your impressions of the village and the school system of Mishicot when you were first employed back in 1940?
Well, I would have to tell you that I fell in love with it. I really fell in love with it. It was a wonderful little community. It had everything that you would want. And so I was not married at the time, and I lived in what they call the Opera Hall, and at least for that first year I did. I had a room there and I took all my meals there. And if I remember correctly, my meals cost me $1 a day. That was breakfast, dinner, and supper. And if I went to Milwaukee on a weekend and didn't eat, I didn't pay the $1. So anyway, I have a trophy here from the Magic, Mishicot Area Growth and Improvement Committee. And if you look at that trophy, it has a plaque on it, and that plaque has everything that was there in Mishicot at the time that I got there. And all the taverns, there were 4 butcher shops, 2 grocery stores. I fell in love with it, I'll tell you. And at that time, I was called a supervising principal. And the school board that hired me consisted of Alvin Yindra, George Schmidt. Alvin was a farmer, George was a plumber, and then Frank Yost, J-O-S-E, who was an insurance man, I believe. And if you remember where Kelly lived, on the corner, in an old house, that's where Frank Yost lived. But that was later torn down and a nice house was built there. So anyway, that little plaque that's on there is just beautiful because it shows one end to the other of town.
Do you recall some of the businesses? You mentioned the 4 butcher shops.
Yeah.
Any other businesses that are no longer there?
Oh my, yes. There's practically nothing there. I hate to say it, but that's true. Little bit is coming back, I guess, but not too much. There were the 4 meat markets, 2 grocery stores. One of them was Finkston's, which you probably know where Finkston's was. And the other one was Holtz. And Holtz, you could buy everything except meat because we had 4 butcher shops. And the 4 butcher shops were allowed to butcher, really butcher. And then the state came in and took their ability to butcher away. And that's when meat markets or our stores in 2 Rivers started to handle cut meat, and that did away with the butcher shops. And anyway, well, taverns, all kinds of them. And on a Saturday night, wedding dances. They threw the buildings open. You paid $1 and you could come in and dance at their wedding dance. And they made hamburgers. Levenhagen's had the tavern at that time.
Yes.
And on a night when they had a wedding dance, they took all of the tables and the chairs out. There was nothing to sit on because they didn't want anybody to stay at the bar too long. They wanted them to drink and go. And old Art, I'm sure you remember Art and Elsie. They were good people. And Art slept during the day in his chair, but he was a great old man. And so anyway, I have very fond memories. And so when I came back to Mishicot after the war, I was offered a job teaching physics at the college in Milwaukee. At that time, it was Milwaukee State Teachers College. And the gentleman who had the job was going out to Los Alamos for 2 years to learn about the project out there. And so they offered me the job for 2 years, but said, you know, I'd have to get another degree if I wanted to stay. But I'll tell you, when I came out of the Army, Mishicot had a superintendent, so I couldn't go back. So I taught math in the college and an evening class, and then I also taught at the vocational school. Kids coming out of the Army didn't have the proper credits to go to college, and so they were taking courses at the vocational school, high school courses. And so I taught physics there, and I also taught night classes. For 2 years, I taught there until Mishicot opened up. And then I went back. I could have stayed at the vocational school. I could have stayed teaching math at the college. But I had such fond memories of Mishicot, you know? Had a wonderful time. The people were great, even though they took the tires off my car. But anyway.
Do you remember who hired you at Mishicot that first?
Absolutely.
1940?
Absolutely. Alvin Yindra, who was a farmer. You probably remember Alvin Yindra. George Schmidt, who was plumber. Yeah. And Frank Yost, who I think was an insurance man. And I guess I told you, he lived in the house that Dave Kelly did.
Were these school board members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And at that time, they called me a supervising principal. And I had the powers that they gave me. In other words, if they didn't want me to hire teachers, they didn't have to give me that power. But they did give me the authority to hire teachers. And so I was a supervising principal. I don't know, I forget how long that I qualified to be a superintendent, you know. After I had certain number of years experience, I qualified to be a superintendent.
Do you remember what your starting salary was?
I certainly do. I certainly do. Let's see now. I want to get this straight. I took the job because of the salary, in a sense. My salary just for the being a supervising principal was, let's see now, I gotta be sure I get this straight. I'm trying to think. That was 2000. And I got out of college. Oh my. No, right now it just doesn't come to me, but I think it, as a supervising principal, I think I made $160
A month?
a month, yeah.
Do you remember some of the first staff members that you hired?
That I hired, I'll tell you, of course, some of them had been hired for me. Woody Bergner came to be one of the first teachers, but I didn't hire him, the board did. But he was, in other words, they had hired him before they hired me. And Woody really coached everything. We listed him as coach. And so we had a football team, a basketball team. But when I first came to Mishicot, I coached the boys team.
In what sport?
In basketball. And I coached the girls in basketball. Way back when, 1940, long time before Title IX, I had a basketball team. And at that time, the rules were different. Only 2 people could cross the center line.
Boys and girls?
No, just the girls.
Just the girls.
Boys had free movement. But with the boys, after every basket, you had a jump ball. And so the scores were not very high. I can remember games that I coached where at the end of the game, the score was 6-4. Now, oh my. So anyway, but yeah, I coached boys and girls, but the boys played the regular rules. As a matter of fact, Joe Sams was a freshman on my basketball team in 1940.
Basketball was played at Levenhagen's or the Opera House.
Yes, it was.
Could you give us a bit of a physical description of that facility?
Okay.
And what kind of activities took place?
Everything. We had wedding dances were there, dinners for funerals, dinners for weddings. They had a little place at the end of the building where they served well, what shall I say? They served ice cream, and so everything that went on there, and on a wedding night, all the doors to all the taverns were open, and people just went up and down the streets. There were, I don't know how many taverns there were, but there was one across from Levenhagen's. There was John Shire had a tavern down on that block. Olson had a tavern. There was the restaurant and bowling alley. They had 4 active bowling alleys. I bowled in a league there. I I bowled for Holtz with Hugo Holst on his team on Monday night. And I wasn't the greatest, but once in a while I would get a 200. But anyway, you know, Hugo died in an accident. You remember how Hugo Holst died?
No,
Huh?
I don't remember that.
Okay, well, Mishicot flooded. And Hugo's basement got flooded. And we had electric boxes down in the basement. My house and his house were duplicates. Mine was built in 105. I think, and his was built, I think, in 103. So I had a duplicate. And so in 105, the river came up and flooded his basement. And so he went down to turn off the current, and got a shock, I guess, and well, anyway, he died in the basement.
Electrocuted.
Electrocuted, yeah, right. And I had a duplicate in my place. And so I was lucky. I just didn't flood. But I can tell you, when I learned that, I got my shovel out and I dug down to get contact with my pipe that went to the house to provide current. And I cut it to where it wouldn't be able to get water anymore. And I not only cut it, but I filled it with the pit with sand, so that even if water got there, it couldn't get to the house. So I was fortunate. It could have been me. So anyway, yeah, that was too bad. He was a nice man. You know, he was a plumber, but he was a perfect gentleman. Yeah.
Now the opera house where high school functions were, weddings were, and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah. Well,
The basketball team played there.
Yeah, it had a balcony that came over the court. And so people sat in the balcony for the game, and so there was part of the floor they couldn't see that was under them.
Right.
And so, there wasn't a lot of scoring anyway, because as I told you, there was a jump ball after every basket. But anyway, we played in there, oh my, until we built the new gym.
Right.
And the new gym was built in 58 is when it went into the new building and had a gym, a regular gym. And that was 1958. 1956, we had I operated 17 rural schools. And so I would load up my trailer with whatever they needed. Stuff to put in the outdoor toilet, lime, water for their water bottles, anything that they needed for the 17 one-room schools. And I'd put all that in my trailer and go around and textbooks and stop and say, well, what do you need? And they would tell me what they needed, and I'd give it to them, and I'd go on to another school. I had 17 of them.
Now,
17 of them.
now, back when you started,
Yeah.
do you recall what basically the subjects were in the high school curriculum?
Well, yeah, probably yes and no. We had Howard Depke taught science, and so we had a science program, and we had a grade school program. Hazel Levenhagen taught, and let's see who else taught. Bernard Schwacke were the two elementary teachers, and Howard Depke taught science in high school. I taught geometry and let's see what else I taught geometry and algebra. And as a matter of fact, the day before school started in my first year, I was outside shooting baskets. We had an outside basket, and I was shooting baskets, and what did I do? I had a problem and sprained my ankle, and went to the doctor, and he said, well, you're lucky it's a sprain. And so when I'm going into my first class in the morning, opening day of school, I had crutches that I got from the Levenhagens and didn't know that one cap was worn out. And so, and I'm going into my geometry class, the crutches slipped out, my foot hit the ground, and I broke my foot. And so I'm walking, so for the first 6 weeks of school, I'm walking with crutches. And you want to get up and down steps with crutches? Have fun, I'll tell you. So anyway, yeah, it was a tough experience, but you know, you do what you have to do.
Now, during the 40s and 50s, what were considered the common student discipline problems that teachers had to confront? And what kind of discipline did they give out?
Well, let me see. Well, you know, it varied a little bit from class to class. I would say probably talking back to a teacher. As a matter of fact, I remember expelling a student because he basically told the teacher where she could go, how to get there, and but I expelled him, and I mean I expelled him, I really did. So I would say that in a real bad case, expulsion, but otherwise the discipline was generally what we called a detention, which was an hour after school. And in those days, there were no buses, and so if we kept them after school for detention, either they had to get their own way home, or in some cases I had to take them home. Oh. But yeah, I would say disobedience to a teacher, and
Now, there were numerous one-room elementary schools in the Mishicot School District when
Right.
you started.
yes,
And that was until 1956, when
Yes.
the Mishicot School District became a consolidated school district. What memories do you have concerning that consolidation process?
well, well, yeah. Your dad would know that we went out to a lot of evening meetings. I can even remember one evening meeting in Larrabee where we were showing a movie about consolidated schools, and the movie broke down, and so we had a splice the movie, and the chairman said, "Take that crap and get out of here." And so we didn't, though, but he wanted us to leave, and we didn't, but we had a lot of meetings, a lot of night meetings, a lot of travel, a lot of good help. And I guess I would have to say a good school board. And at that time, the school board had been in business a long time, really. We had, let's see, who was on it? Well, there was your dad. There was Lambert. That's two. Lambert, your dad, and oh my, Nimmer, Sherman Nimmer. Three board members that, I'll tell you, if you wanted something done, you just had to kind of ask them, and they were right there with the help. But a lot of people in the community too, so, but we had a lot of meetings, so it meant a lot of night stuff, and, but the end result was great, so. Two things I learned, and that is that if you want it done, do it. For instance, the athletic field, I wanted a track and a football field, but they wanted too much money. And I said to Mac, who was the janitor, let's do it. And so we got a transit and a bar, what do they call it, when you set it up to measure heights.
Okay.
I forgot the word, but it's anyway, I operated the transit because I learned how to do one when I was in the service, and he operated the range pole. And so we set up a track, a football field. We had a well dug so the football field could be watered with pop-up sprinklers. And so we put up a bleacher, dug the well, or had somebody come in and dig the well. And so when we were done, we had an 8-lane track. It was asphalt, and the ability to water the football field, and we had a fence around the field, and we managed all those things really by hiring help or doing it ourselves. And so I always said, if you want something done, damn it, do it. And I hope that we left that attitude to Mishicot, and I think we did, because they recently raised $10 million to do a retrofit of facilities. And so at a time like this, when money is short, to raise $10 million, I think is really remarkable.
Now, a new high school was built in 1958.
Right.
What problems do you recall that you and your school board faced convincing the people of the district to build that new high school?
Well, I think, I think that we felt that the community was ready for it. And you know, that first building cost us, 500 and some, about 540,000, wait a minute. $540,000.
That was the new high school.
Yes, yes. And so that was cheap. Really, okay? And if you think of now, they spent 10 million.
Just to retrofit.
Yeah. And so we got the high school, and let's see, what else do we get in that package? Well, we got the high school, and it wasn't a real hard sell, because it wasn't a lot of money. It wasn't a lot of money, and so and we didn't have any debt, so to speak. And so I can remember I was 49 years old, and I was standing with one wall behind me that was braced up with 2x4s. And there's only one wall there. But no, we got it furnished and equipment for 500 and some thousand, and that was a real bargain. And we had no other debts, so it wasn't a real hard sell.
Now, 7 years later,
Yeah.
in 1965, a new elementary
Yeah.
school was built.
Yeah.
Tell us about the innovative concept of that school.
Well, I had been reading books, and I kind of thought, the normal design that an engineer, a builder would give you was a central office space and then 2 wings, which is what our original high school was. And I thought, that's not going to sell. That's not going to sell. But I needed money, and that was, let's see, that was 1965, yeah. I told the architect, I said, I've been looking at round buildings. And if you're, a round building provides you more interior space for less exterior space. It's a perfect fit. A square is next best. But if you want to put the most inside for less of building outside, you do a round building. But I knew that a round building would not excite people. And so we decided to put 3 wings on it. And then we call it our snowflake. And so I built my snowflake in 1965, yeah.
Right.
And it was named the O.H. Schultz Elementary School in 79. And so I see you taking a picture of the plaque up there. But that was not 79, that was, what was that? What was the date on that?
It's got a bunch of dates. You want the date of?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it would have the beginning and ending dates. Yeah.
You have a consolidated district in 1956.
Yeah, yeah,
High school in 58.
yeah,
Elementary, innovative elementary in 65.
yeah,
Expansion of the high school in 75.
yeah,
The athletic fields that you talked about in 78.
yeah, yeah.
And then the bottom here, it says 1979.
Yeah, okay.
I would just like to add something here. In recognition of your service and leadership, in 1979, there was a rededication
Right.
of the Mishicot Community Innovative Elementary School
Right,
to be named the Otto H. Schultz Elementary School.
right,
Now, in 1975, there was an expansion of the high school facilities.
right.
And at that time, what facilities were you hoping would be included that the district voters did not approve?
I wanted a swimming pool. But I knew I wasn't gonna get it. I was gonna put the swimming pool behind the high school. But knowing that the voters wouldn't approve it, I gave them choices. And because I wanted to get what I wanted to get, which was an improvement on what we had. And I knew they wouldn't go for a swimming pool. I could have gotten it for about $200,000. But I knew I better spend my $200,000 somewhere else, because they weren't going to give me a swimming pool. Wouldn't that have been nice? Oh my!
What about an auditorium? Did you anticipate giving the voters an option to include an auditorium?
No,
Not
no. I guess again, I knew that what I was going to get was what I was going to get, and that was other facilities. In other words, I think at that time they put in a little elevator so that we could take our handicapped, and I don't know, let's see, I don't know, 79, I wanted some improvements, and, but I needed $600, $600,000. And so, John Rich was my principal then, and, the state was giving away money, well, you could get money from the state. And so in '69 we went down to Madison, and we got there about, oh, I don't know, 3 in the morning, and I got out of the car, and we hadn't brought a chair. That was stupid, but anyway, I got out of the car and went and stood by the door, and John says to me, "You aren't going to stand here for 3 hours." And I looked at John and I said, "John, I didn't come here to be second in line." And I stood for 3 hours. I got my $600,000.
Now, you retired in 1983.
Right.
What do you consider your greatest accomplishment while employed by the Mishicot School District?
Well, I guess I don't like to think of that as my accomplishments. It's our accomplishments. Because you can't do anything alone. No. You've got to have help. And so what you got to do is to find people who are willing to help. And so you got to try to present things that they can look at and appreciate and want to be a part of. And so I think that the biggest thing that I may have left to the community is the willingness to do things, to improve things, to say, if we can get help, we can do it. And so you got to look for the help, and it's there. It's there. It's surprising. I had a school board that you want to do it, we'll do it. We'll ask for it. We'll get it. So I think that's the biggest thing I've left is a community that is willing to look at it and say, it's possible. It's possible. You know, here they borrowed $10 million at a time when times are tough.
To have accomplished that you just weren't able to.
Swimming pool.
That's one.
Yeah. We got the athletic field, and I understand now they've put lights on it, and so, you know, it's a good facility, and 8-lane track, sprinkler heads that come out of the ground, completely surrounded by fence, its own well, so that we can water it without worrying about money, and a place to sell food, a log cabin in the woods. Did you know about that?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. Where they can have sessions to learn about what grows and how to take care of it. So, you know, I think we've got people that are willing to do things, and I'm happy to say that I was a part of it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Schultz. It's been a real pleasure
Yeah,
talking
well-
to you and hearing about all of your wonderful experiences in Mishicot, and your leadership and service has certainly been greatly appreciated.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed my post-retirement days. AARP was a good place to go, and I was on the national board for 6 years and traveled all over the country. Testified before Congress twice, and I testified about long-term health care, and that's a kind of an interesting experience. The senators are there and they're not there. But you give them what you're going to say, so they have it. But they're in and out, in and out.
All of your wonderful experiences in Mishicot and your leadership and service has certainly been greatly appreciated.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed my post-retirement days. AARP was a good place to go, and I was on the national board for 6 years and traveled all over the country. Testified before Congress twice, and I testified about long-term health care, and that's a kind of an interesting experience. The senators are there and they're not there. But you give them what you're going to say, so they have it. But they're in and out, in and out. So anyway.
Well, thank you very much, Mr.
Yeah,
Schultz.
well, you're welcome, and your name is Kevin, right?
Correct.
I thank you for coming, and you're part of the elementary school.
This is the end of our June 27, 2018 oral history interview with Mr. Otto H. Schultz. The interviewer was Jack Spevacek, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Mr. Schultz will be observing his 100th birthday this coming July 22nd. And an early, very, very happy birthday, Mr. Schultz.
I thank you. I'm hoping to get there. This morning I thought things weren't working very well. I thought, hell, I don't want to get there.